On August 21st, 1988, designer Ray Eames died, 10 years to the day after the death of her husband, architect Charles Eames. Following her plans, 901 Washington Boulevard, their workplace for 45 years, was sold and its contents dispersed by the family to museums and other institutions according to her wishes. But first we made this record of the marvelous world Charles and Ray designed within 901 and the process of closing it. In 1943, Charles and Ray moved their shop into this old garage in Venice, California. Here they designed furniture, toys, games, graphics, showrooms and shows, made over 100 films, shot stills, wrote books, initiated studies like the India Report, created museum exhibitions, and more. Sam Passalacqua, staff member for 22 years. The musical towers were a toy idea the Eameses developed in the late 50s. Often the first task of an intern would be to rearrange the keys for a new tune. Ray's eye and memory for color and shape were legendary. From the start, much of her work was done here in the graphics room, one of the original 3 rooms of the office of Charles and Ray Eames. The House of Cards, 1952. At the back of 901, patterns for furniture hang in the shop. Few drawings of Eames designs were made because the prototypes, mock-ups, and models of everything from furniture to exhibitions were made in-house here, so they could be reworked and refined directly. Charles was working on this sofa prototype at the time of his death. The Eameses designed this glider nose cone during World War II, as well as stretchers and splints, under military contracts using the Eames work with molding plywood into compound curves. It weighs under 90 pounds. Visiting the shop, friend and artist Saul Steinberg gave 2 of these Eames chairs permanent occupants. At the time, this fiberglass shell sat on the ground and Steinberg continued her legs onto the floor. The office always had something, a timeline, a storyboard, a data sequence, on the walls of the main work area. The layout of Ray's last book, seen through the texture of the wire sofa prototype. Charles and Ray left some 750,000 slides and stills to the Library of Congress. Billy and Audrey Wilder on their honeymoon. Ray was cataloging these stills for 5 years before her death. The Library of Congress worked with her and will complete the job. Charles and Ray in the late 40s. Charles with daughter Lucia. Lucia today and Charles when he graduated from high school. Charles worked at the Laclede Steel Mill, St. Louis, Missouri. In 1948, during the construction of the Case Study House they designed and built for themselves using off-the-shelf industrial parts. A last photograph of Ray. Ray is a little girl in Sacramento, California. Outside, in an enclosure right next to the building, was the favorite place to take lunch. Inside or out, Charles and Ray preferred to stay at the shop to eat, often joined by a visitor or staff member. At other times, the exterior was a movie set. like with Tops, Powers of 10, and other films. In 1943, the Eames office took up just the very front of 901, sharing the reception area with the molded plywood division of the Evans Products Company, who occupied the rest of the building and mass-produced the first units of the Eames furniture there. Herman Miller took over marketing and distribution in late 1946 and the manufacturing by 1950. When they left in 1958 for larger quarters, the Eames office expanded into the empty space. In Charles's office, a photo of Charles receiving an honorary doctorate from Washington University, 40 years after being thrown out for his advocacy of Frank Lloyd Wright. This music is from the hurdy-gurdy, an 18th century hand-cranked organ that Charles took great proprietary pleasure in playing. The triangular monolith is from 1972's Copernicus show, commissioned by IBM for the 500th anniversary of the astronomer's birth. When its glass was shattered in shipping, Charles liked the look so much that he considered giving all the monoliths in the show the same treatment, but in the end simply saved this one for the office. Emily Maeda worked at the Eames office for 17 years and was the last in its line of full-time cooks. Charles loved this shot of Jefferson's boots from the Franklin and Jefferson show. Possibly the best-known Eames chair, the lounge chair and ottoman, 1956. Clamps held the partitions in place, keeping the space flexible, so if needed the office could be reconfigured or even whole rooms added. The painting is by Lee Krasner, Ray's lifelong friend from their work with painter Hans Hofmann in the 1930s. This is a painting of Ray's from that same era. the Cezanne film, only stills, no movies or the paintings were permitted, so Bill Tondreau of the Eames office built from scratch one of the world's first computer-controlled movie cameras and made sophisticated camera moves across a standard color slide. The conference room was also a screening room, and here a visitor was often treated to an impromptu film festival. Some recent films and their first, Traveling Boy, may be followed by a 3-screen slideshow, Tim God or India. Polaroid gave Charles one of their first 5 SX70 cameras to help them show that someone could take more than just snapshots with it. This view is from the slide area in the new building, added in 1971 as a shooting stage and fireproof shelter for the rare artifacts of the Computer Perspective exhibition. The 3 Charles Eames Arrow Saarinen chairs that won the 1940 organic furniture competition at the Museum of Modern Art. Charles and Ray met when she helped prepare the drawings. One film that Charles carried in his head but never made was one with their toy ships. But toys from their collection appeared throughout their stills, exhibitions, and especially films. The new building also housed their film vaults, including the film house after 5 years of living. Bar charts for an Elmer Bernstein score. Ray's office became a full, very private space, inside of which others were rarely, if ever, allowed. Alexander Gerard, lifelong friend and collaborator. The first and by far the largest shipment from 901 was the vast collection of notes, records, slides, photographs, films, and other two-dimensional material to the Library of Congress for the collection Work of Charles and Ray Eames. At the time of her death, Ray was archiving this gift and finishing with the Newharts the massive book Eames Design. She was also facing the task of bringing 901 up to earthquake code as soon as those projects were completed. The extensive reinforcement needed in the old building would require removing its contents and demolishing the interior. For this and other reasons, Ray directed that in the event of her death, 901 was to be emptied and sold. Significant works went to many other institutions, and 3 museums have each undertaken curatorial responsibility for an entire room from the Eames office.
Yeah, go. I'll let it down. We'll put a block under there. Yeah.
Early in the morning, just before the demolition for the new owner's earthquake work began, we realized that In a way, we had been waiting for a moment when it would no longer be theirs, as if, with enough things gone, it would no longer be 901. But still, empty, there was the way the space was carved that was still Charles and Ray's. Afterwards, each night, we looked to see if the destruction had uncovered any things we should save, like this photo from Cranbrook behind an uprooted darkroom cabinet of Eros Saarinen and Charles Eames.